I, 26F, discovered my family has been holding annual reunions without me for the past 8 years because my stepmother convinced them I didn't want to come. They're furious that I'm refusing to get over it now that the truth came out, saying I'm punishing them for an honest miscommunication. I don't even know how to begin processing this. 2 weeks ago, my entire understanding of my family and my place in it was shattered, and now everyone is acting like I'm the villain for being upset. I'm questioning everything I thought I knew about the people who raised me, and I need outside perspective because I feel like I'm drowning. Background: my mom died when I was 10 years old. It was sudden, a brain aneurysm, and it devastated our family. My dad was a wreck. My older brother Kyle, he's 4 years older than me, tried to step up and be strong, but he was only 14 and grieving too. For about 2 years, it was just the three of us trying to figure out how to be a family without the person who held us all together. When I was 12, my dad started dating someone named Cheryl. She was a friend of a friend, a widow with no kids of her own. At first, I was resistant, I think any kid would be. But Cheryl was patient and kind, or at least I thought she was. She didn't try to replace my mom, she just slowly became part of our lives. By the time I was 13, she and my dad got married. Kyle was 17 by then, and already pretty independent, focused on getting ready for college. The first few years with Cheryl were okay. Not great, but okay. She had rules that felt strict compared to how my dad had been, but Dad said she was just trying to bring structure back to our household. She'd make comments sometimes that stung, like comparing me unfavorably to her friends' daughters, or saying things like, "Your mother would want you to try harder," when I struggled with school or chores. But I figured that was just what stepmothers did. All the movies and books suggested step-parent relationships were complicated. When I was 15, something shifted. Cheryl became more critical, more controlling. She'd go through my room when I wasn't home. She'd read my diary and then confront me about things I'd written. She'd make rules that only applied to me, not Kyle, when he was home from college. When I'd complain to my dad, he'd say I was being dramatic or that Cheryl was just trying to help me become a responsible adult. Kyle went away to college when I was 14, and after that, he wasn't around much. He'd come home for holidays, but he was building his own life. I felt abandoned, even though I knew that wasn't fair. I was stuck in a house with a dad who worked long hours and a stepmother who seemed to actively dislike me. My extended family, my dad's siblings, my grandparents, my cousins had always been really close. Before my mom died, we had big family gatherings all the time. After she died, those gatherings continued, and they were one of the few things that made me feel connected to her memory because everyone would share stories about her. My aunts especially would make sure to tell me things about my mom, show me pictures, keep her memory alive for me. But when I turned 18 and graduated high school, I noticed I was seeing my extended family less and less. I'd ask my dad about getting together with everyone, and he'd say they were all busy or that we'd plan something soon that never materialized. I was hurt, but I was also starting college and working part-time, so I was busy too. I figured everyone was just caught up in their own lives. Over the next several years, I'd occasionally reach out to my aunts, uncles, and cousins on social media or via text. They'd respond, but the responses felt distant and brief. I'd suggest getting together, and they'd be vague about timing. I started to feel like they didn't want to see me, and that hurt deeply. These were people I'd grown up with, who I'd been close to, and suddenly I felt like I didn't matter to them anymore. I asked Kyle about it once when I was about 20. He said he still saw everyone at family stuff and that I should just reach out more. I told him I had been reaching out and getting brushed off. He said maybe I was being too sensitive and reading into things. That response hurt too, so I stopped bringing it up. By the time I was 22, I'd more or less accepted that my extended family had moved on without me. It stung, but I built my own life. I finished college, got a good job as a graphic designer, got my own apartment, and created a chosen family with close friends. I'd see my dad and Cheryl occasionally for holidays, always at their house, always just the four of us, Kyle, when he was in town. I'd still get birthday texts from aunts and uncles, but that was about it. I convinced myself I was okay with this. I told myself that families drift apart sometimes, especially after significant losses. I told myself I probably reminded them too much of my mom, and it was easier for them to not be around me. It hurt, but I accepted it as my reality. 2 weeks ago, everything changed. I was at a coffee shop working on a freelance project when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around, and it was my cousin Madison. I hadn't seen Madison in person in probably 6 years, though we were Facebook friends and occasionally liked each other's posts. Madison looked shocked to see me. She said, "Oh my God, Emma. What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in Europe?" I had no idea what she was talking about. I told her I lived about 20 minutes away and had for years. She looked confused and said, "But Cheryl said you moved to Europe for work, and that's why you never come to family events anymore." My stomach dropped. I asked her what family events she was talking about. Madison's confusion turned to concern. She said, "The reunion. We have one every summer. We've been doing it for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years now. The whole family gets together for a long weekend. Cheryl always said you were invited but couldn't make it because you were overseas." I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. I told Madison I'd never moved to Europe. I'd been living in the same state, less than an hour away from where most of the family lived, for the past 8 years. Madison went pale. She asked if I was serious. I showed her my apartment lease on my phone, my local driver's license. She started crying right there in the coffee shop. Madison told me that every year the whole family, my dad's siblings, their kids, my grandparents before they passed, everyone got together for a long weekend at a lake house. They'd rent a big place, everyone would come, and they'd spend time together. It had become a tradition. And apparently, every single year, when someone would ask about me, Cheryl would say I was living abroad and couldn't make it, but that she'd asked me, and I'd sent my love. I felt sick. I asked Madison when this year's reunion was. She said it had been last month. I'd been home, less than an hour away, while my entire family gathered without me. While they all believed I was on another continent, I was sitting in my apartment wondering why none of them wanted to see me. Madison was horrified. She immediately called her mom, my Aunt Lisa, right there in the coffee shop and told her what she'd just learned. I could hear my aunt's shocked reaction through the phone. Within 10 minutes, my phone started blowing up with calls and texts from various family members. My Aunt Lisa called me directly, crying. She said she had no idea. She said they'd all been told I was living in Europe, that I was thriving there, that I was too busy to come home, but that Cheryl kept them updated on my life. She said they'd all been sad I couldn't make the reunions, but they understood because international travel is expensive and complicated. She said if they'd known I was here in the same state, not being invited, they would have reached out directly years ago. I asked her why they never reached out to me themselves. Why they never called or texted me directly instead of just getting updates through Cheryl. Lisa got quiet and then said that Cheryl had told them I'd asked for space from the family because being around them reminded me too much of my mom and made me depressed. She said Cheryl had asked them to let me reach out when I was ready and to not push because it might make things worse. So there it was. For 8 years, Cheryl had been systematically cutting me off from my extended family. She'd lied to them about where I was and what I wanted. She'd lied to me by simply not telling me these reunions existed. She'd intercepted any potential connection by telling both sides that the other side wanted distance. And everyone had just believed her. For 8 years. I left the coffee shop in a daze. I went straight to my dad's house. Cheryl answered the door and had the audacity to smile and act surprised to see me. I pushed past her and asked where my dad was. He was in his study. I walked in and asked him point-blank about the family reunions. The look on his face told me everything. Guilt. He knew. My dad knew that the family had been getting together without me, and he'd gone along with it. I asked him how he could do that. How he could go to these reunions, see his siblings and their kids, and not think to bring his own daughter. My dad tried to explain. He said that Cheryl had convinced him it was for the best. That I'd been so difficult and moody as a teenager, that I'd said things about not feeling comfortable around the family. I had no memory of saying this, and that when I moved out, Cheryl thought it would be good to give me independence and space. He said the European story started as a small lie when I didn't come to the first reunion, and then it snowballed, and by the time he realized how big the lie had gotten, he didn't know how to correct it. I asked him why he didn't just tell me about the reunions and let me decide if I wanted to come. He didn't have a good answer. Just that Cheryl said it would be awkward, that I'd made it clear I wanted distance, that it was better this way. I asked him how he could choose his wife's comfort over his daughter's place in the family. He said it wasn't like that he'd rationalized it as respecting my wishes even though deep down he knew something was wrong. Cheryl had been standing in the doorway listening. She jumped in and said I was twisting everything, that she'd been trying to protect me from family drama, that there had been tensions I didn't know about, that she'd made judgment calls about what was best for everyone. I asked her what tensions. She couldn't name any. I asked her what gave her the right to make those calls. She said she was trying to help our blended family work, and I was always so resistant to her. I lost it. I started yelling about how she'd stolen 8 years of family connections from me. 8 years of memories, holidays, bonding with cousins, being there for births and weddings and graduations. My grandmother had died 3 years ago, and I wasn't told about family gatherings where everyone reminisced about her. My cousin had gotten married, and I'd seen pictures on Facebook and wondered why I wasn't invited, not knowing that everyone thought I was in Europe. Cheryl started crying and said I was being cruel and that she'd done her best with a difficult situation. My dad asked me to calm down. I told him there was nothing to calm down about. His wife had systematically erased me from the family, and he'd let it happen. I left and haven't been back since. The aftermath has been insane. My extended family is horrified and furious at Cheryl and, honestly, at my dad too for going along with it. My Aunt Lisa has called me every day, crying and apologizing. She sent me boxes of photos from the reunions I missed, which was both touching and devastating. Looking at pictures of my family together, happy, while I was alone thinking they didn't want me, has been one of the most painful experiences of my life. My cousins have reached out en masse. They're all sorry, all shocked, all saying they wish they'd questioned the story more or reached out directly. Madison has been especially supportive. She's organized a get-together with just the cousins so I can reconnect with everyone, and it's this weekend. But here's where it gets complicated. My family is now planning an official reunion to make up for the ones I missed, and they want it to happen next month. They want me there, obviously, but they also expect my dad to be there. And they're divided on whether Cheryl should be invited. My Uncle Mark says Cheryl absolutely shouldn't come, that what she did is unforgivable, and she doesn't deserve to be part of family events. My Aunt Lisa is more middle ground. She thinks Cheryl was wrong, but that she's still my dad's wife, and it's complicated. My dad is saying that if Cheryl isn't invited, he won't come, and that's causing a huge rift. And here's the really messed up part. Cheryl and my dad, along with some of the family, think I'm overreacting. Cheryl sent me a long email saying she's sorry I'm hurt, but that her intentions were good, and she was trying to manage complex family dynamics. She said that holding on to anger will only hurt me, and that families need forgiveness to function. She said she hopes I can move past this, so we can all heal together. My dad called me yesterday and said that while he acknowledges mistakes were made, I need to consider forgiveness. He said Cheryl is family, that she's been my stepmother for over a decade, and that tearing the family apart with blame and anger isn't productive. He said 8 years is a long time, yes, but the next 8 years could be better if I just let go of the past. Even Kyle is saying I should consider moving forward. He admitted he'd known about some of the reunions, not all of them, and he claimed he thought I'd been invited and just didn't want to go, and he feels guilty about that. But he also says that holding a grudge against Cheryl will just make family gatherings awkward for everyone, and wouldn't it be better to accept her apology and try to move on? Some of my cousins are echoing this. They're saying they understand I'm hurt, but that Cheryl is still Cheryl, she's not going anywhere, and is it really worth causing ongoing family drama when we could just acknowledge it was messed up and move forward? One cousin said, "We lost 8 years with you. Let's not lose more years to fighting about those 8 years. But I can't just move on. I can't just forgive and forget. This wasn't a one-time lie or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was 8 years of sustained, deliberate deception. 8 years of Cheryl lying to my face every time I mentioned feeling distant from the family. 8 years of her accepting my dad's family's trust and using it to manipulate the narrative about me. 8 years of me thinking I was unwanted when really I was being actively excluded. And my dad went along with it. Maybe he didn't initiate the lies, but he perpetuated them. He went to these reunions, saw his family, and came home to me without ever mentioning them. He watched me pull away, thinking the family didn't want me, and he did nothing to correct it. How do I forgive that? I told my dad I'd come to the reunion, but I didn't want Cheryl there. He said that was unreasonable, that I couldn't dictate who he brought to family events. I said she'd dictated my exclusion from family events for 8 years, so turnabout was fair play. He said I was being vindictive. I said I was being protective of my ability to reconnect with my family without the person who severed those connections sitting there playing victim. Now the family is split. About half think I'm completely justified and that Cheryl shouldn't be at family events, at least not for a while. The other half think I'm being too harsh and that we need to find a way to move forward together, which includes Cheryl. My dad is threatening not to come if Cheryl is explicitly uninvited, which makes some family members angry at him and others sympathetic because they understand not wanting to exclude a spouse. My Aunt Lisa, who's organizing the reunion, is stuck in the middle. She called me crying yesterday, saying she doesn't know what to do. She wants me there desperately, wants to make up for lost time, but she also doesn't want to cause a permanent rift with my dad. She asked if there's any compromise I'd accept. I said maybe Cheryl could come to some events, but not all, but honestly, even saying that made me feel sick. Why should I have to compromise with the person who stole years of my life from me? My therapist, I started seeing one immediately after all this came out, says that forgiveness is a process and I shouldn't let anyone rush me. She says I have every right to set boundaries and that the family's discomfort with those boundaries is not my responsibility. She says the fact that so many people are more concerned with keeping the peace than with addressing the severity of what was done to me is itself a red flag. But I'm exhausted. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of the constant calls and texts from family members with opinions on what I should do. I'm tired of my dad's guilt-trippy voicemails about how I'm punishing him and Cheryl for an honest miscommunication, his words. I'm tired of Cheryl's emails about healing and moving forward. Part of me wonders if everyone's right and I should just suck it up and forgive. After all, I have my family back now. I have the opportunity to build relationships with my aunts, uncles, and cousins. Isn't that what matters? Does it really help anything to stay angry at Cheryl and my dad? Will refusing to forgive them actually make my life better, or will it just create ongoing tension and drama? But another part of me is screaming that this isn't about forgiveness on their timeline. I've had 2 weeks to process 8 years of lies and manipulation. They're acting like I should just get over it because the truth came out and now everything can go back to normal. But there is no normal to go back to. The normal I knew was built on lies. Last night, Cheryl showed up at my apartment. She said we needed to talk woman to woman. I didn't want to let her in, but I was too shocked to stop her. She sat on my couch and told me that she understood why I was upset, but I needed to understand her position. She said that when she married my dad, I was a grieving, difficult teenager who resented her. She said she tried everything to connect with me, but I pushed her away. She said that when I moved out, she saw an opportunity to let both of us have space and to preserve the peace in her marriage to my dad. She said the lie about Europe just happened, that at the first reunion someone asked about me and she panicked and said I was traveling, and then it became easier to just maintain that story than to admit I wasn't invited. She said she never meant for it to go on so long, but years passed and it seemed too late to correct it. She said she thought I was happy with my independence and my own life, so what did it matter if I missed a few family gatherings? I asked her if she really believed that. If she really thought stealing my family from me was justified, because I was a difficult teenager who'd lost her mother. She said she didn't steal anything, that I could have reached out to family members directly at any time. I said I did reach out and got vague, distant responses, probably because they thought I was asking them to what? Fly to Europe for coffee? Cheryl said I was determined to paint her as a villain, but she was just a woman who made some mistakes while trying to navigate a complicated situation. She said she'd apologized, she'd acknowledged her errors, and she didn't know what else I wanted from her. I told her I wanted the 8 years back. I wanted the memories and the connections and the sense of belonging I'd lost. Since she couldn't give me that, I wanted her to accept that there would be consequences for her actions, and one of those consequences was that I didn't want to be around her. She started crying and said I was being cruel and unforgiving, that she tried to be a mother to me after I lost mine, and this was how I repaid her. I told her to get out of my apartment. She left, but not before saying she hoped I'd reconsider before I permanently damaged my relationship with my father. I don't know what to do. The reunion is in 3 weeks. My Aunt Lisa needs an answer about whether I'm coming and whether I'll make a scene if Cheryl is there. My dad is waiting to see if he's welcome. Kyle is saying I'm making this harder than it needs to be. My cousins are excited to see me, but worried about the tension. And I'm just lost. I want my family back. I want to go to this reunion and hug my aunts and laugh with my cousins and feel like I belong. But I don't know if I can do that with Cheryl there, smiling and acting like we're all good now. I don't know if I can sit across from my dad and pretend I'm not devastated by his betrayal. Reddit, please help. Am I overreacting by refusing to move on from 8 years of deliberate exclusion from family gatherings? Should I just forgive Cheryl and my dad so everyone can move forward? Am I being vindictive and making things worse by insisting Cheryl not be at the reunion? Should I accept that mistakes were made and focus on the future instead of the past? I genuinely can't tell if I'm standing up for myself or if I'm being unnecessarily stubborn and punishing everyone for something that can't be changed. Everyone has such strong opinions, and I'm so confused and hurt and angry and sad. I just need some outside perspective from people who aren't emotionally invested in keeping my family comfortable. Edit. Thank you all so much for the overwhelming support and validation. Reading these comments has made me cry in a good way. I've realized that I'm not crazy for being hurt and angry, and that moving on everyone else's timeline is not healing, it's just rug sweeping. I've decided I'm going to the reunion, and I've told my Aunt Lisa that I need Cheryl not to be there for this first one. If that means my dad doesn't come, that's his choice. I'm also going to have a serious conversation with my dad about our relationship and whether it can be salvaged because right now I don't know if it can. Thank you all for helping me see that I deserve better than what I've been given.